Hello, Floriani Club. It's Brad again with another Floriani video for you. Today we're going to be digitizing from a backdrop again, and the twist is we're going to be using the ruler tool to tell us what type of stitch we ought to use in each situation. It's a feature that I haven't really ever talked about, and I actually never really used it myself, but it's pretty helpful. So open up your Floriani software, hit Create a New Design, and we're going to be digitizing a design from a TV show called Adventure Time with Finn and Jake. And the image, if you're someone who is physically in the class, is going to be on your CD. Otherwise, use Google to search for Finn and Jake high five or something like that, and you'll find this image, I'm sure. The first thing we're going to do is size it. This is like pretty huge, so I'm just going to arbitrarily pick 4 inches for the width. So in your backdrop properties here, go ahead and change this value from 9.38 or whatever it comes up on your screen to 4. It'll automatically adjust the height for you, and we'll just hit apply. Okay, so now we've got our image sized. Let's go ahead and zoom in a bit and take a look at some of the elements that we're going to be turning into stitches. Well, we've got these wide spaces where there's big areas of color. Um, it's pretty clear to me that that is something that I should use a fill stitch for. But if you're not sure what type of stitch to use in any given situation, you can always go over here to this tool, which is the ruler tool. You left click on it, and what this does is it'll actually measure a space. If you left click and drag, it tells you the distance. So right there, that's 1 inch wide, and it's telling us that we need to use a fill stitch for that. So that was pretty easy. Like, well, yeah, of course you should use a fill stitch for that. But let's take a look at some of these other areas here. Let's look at one of his legs. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Zoom in on the leg here. We'll left click and drag the widest part. It is 0.12 inches, and it's telling us to use a satin for that. So this is a type of shape that a satin stitch would work well for. And we can look at the little pom-poms on his boots. That says to use a satin stitch for that too. And his feet are also being recommended as being a satin stitch. Now, the other thing that you may wonder what type of stitch to use would be an outline. And depending on how large your image is, maybe at the original size, we may have been tempted to use a satin stitch. But if we look at the width, let's zoom in, we look at the width of from here to here on this part of the border, it's telling us to use a run stitch because it's just so narrow. You wouldn't actually be able to make a satin stitch that's sewed out that small. You can tell the software to do it. If I go in and I draw a section of this outline here, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but we'll just make a shape that's as wide as the outline. Okay, so I've got this little shape. I can tell it to make it a satin stitch, and it looks like it's going to be a satin stitch. We'll put it in 3D. We can see there's a little tiny satin stitch. But in reality, what will happen if we did that is we would end up with a stitch that has essentially 0 width, and it would look like a really messed up running stitch anyway. So if you don't know the right sizes to make the different the different types of stitches, run, satin, and fill, this is a very handy tool because you don't have to know. It knows that you wouldn't be able to do this. So that is something that I wanted to show you, and we'll just be using that as we go in and digitize each part of our design. Now, the first thing that we want to do is plan out what order we're going to sew these things out in, because that's the order that we want to draw them. So looking at this, it looks to me like I would put probably the shirt or the pants down first. I guess I'll do the shirt first. We'll kind of have the design go from the inside out. It's always best to start kind of from the center of each design and move your way out rather than kind of go from down to up or left to right. So the shirt's right in the center, and it's kind of it's underneath the backpack, in terms of layering and this arm and everything. So we'll do the shirt first, and then we'll do the pants. So we'll go shirt, pants. We'll do hat. Although the way that this hat slash mask thing works, his face is kind of under that. So maybe we'll go shirt, pants, face, hat, backpack, arm, legs, and then I guess these little booties and the bottom part of the shoe, although that's black, so that can be done with the outline. So everything black, anything that's black, we're not going to do until we make our outline. Yeah. Okay. So we got something to start with. Shirt, pants, face, but not the detail on his face. Hat, backpack, both parts. We're going to make it both these shades of green. And then we'll start looking at Jake over here. So this is Finn, this is Jake. If you don't know the show, if I say Finn, I mean this guy, and if I say Jake, I mean this guy. So let's get started. I'm gonna start doing his shirt. I'm gonna use the let's see, use the complex fill tool for this, and I'm going to zoom in a little. And I can just use my arrow keys on my keyboard to move around the design. I'm going to start here, and what I'm going to do, see, let's set this to 400%. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this, and I'm going to stay in the middle of the black outline as I trace it. And that's going to make it so that my line should line up with my outline stitch when I put that down. And it'll overlap a little bit because we want to have a little bit of overlap so there's no gap. Okay, and we put this down here. Now I could be using the I could be using the control key to curve these. Oops, not like that. Here, after I get my first click in, I can start to curve it. Okay, and I'm getting a little bit farther from the center of the black outline than I meant to be. Okay, and I'm going to trace it up into here. And around here. Okay, I was using the control key to curve this last bit here. That looks good, so I'm going to generate this. Okay, so we're going to right click to generate. Notice I didn't worry about the fact that there's this black outline here. That's going to be put in later. Now it wants my stitch direction. I'm going to have the stitch direction on this go like this, kind of across his belly. And then once I get that in, I right click. It wants me to set my start and my stop points. So my start point on this, I'm going to start it here, and I'm going to stop it here. Okay, so the green is my start, the red is my stop. So I left click there, and I'm going to left click here. Okay, and everything looks pretty good. All right, now I want to travel from this stop point. I want to travel over here so that we get this part of his shirt as well. And what we want is we want to have a stitch that links right here to right here. Okay, we don't want that to have a jump or a trim. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, and first let's go ahead and set the color for this. I'm going to use my select tool, and I'm going to set this to a lighter blue. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't match exactly, but that's fine. And what we're going to do is now use the run stitch tool right here, and just left click a couple of clicks over to the blue. Remember, this was my stop from my last one, so if I right click now, this element that I just created, let me open it up in my sequence view here. This element here, if we look at the shape tool, it'll have the start be where I started clicking and the stop be where I stopped clicking. So this one sews out first. It starts here, sews out the pattern, stops here. The next element is just going to start right where our stop was, so that the machine doesn't have to stop and cut or leave a jump stitch to go from here to here. Okay, so now we've got this next element, which I didn't measure yet. I technically did. I measured his arm, but let's take a look at it anyway. We use the ruler, okay, this one here, and we're going to check from here to here and see what type of stitch it recommends we use. So we're going to left click and drag from one point to another. It's telling us to use a satin stitch, so that's what we'll do. We're going to go ahead and draw in a satin stitch into this spot. So you're going to go up to this tool right here, Satin Stitch. Don't accidentally use classic Satin Stitch. That thing's a nightmare. Satin Stitch. We're going to left click on that, and we're going to draw this in just like we were drawing in a fill. Okay, so you just draw it in same way we did the rest of the shirt. And then we finish it off. We right click, and that's going to let us put in our stitch direction. There we go. And this shape, we only are going to need one inclination. On a satin stitch, you can use multiple inclinations. On a fill, it's just one stitch direction the whole way. But a satin, you can use multiples. We're just going to use one for this shape. But when we get into this one, we're going to use more than one. But once you get your stitch direction in, right click. Then it asks for the start and stop. So we're going to start it here. We'll stop it down here. And that generates our little area of satin stitch. Now, if you didn't draw it exactly straight, you may end up with a wonky looking satin stitch, so you can just undo and try again. But once you get it in there and it looks kind of like this, then you're good to go. Okay, so what did we say? We were going to do the shirt and then the pants. All right, so let's look at the pants. Now, the pants, if we were to measure from here to here, it's going to tell us to use the satin stitch. But this is all one shape. So we have to measure it from its widest point, and that is going to tell us to use a fill stitch. So that is what we're going to use. We're going to go in and let's go ahead and use our, we'll use our complex fill tool up here at the top, and let's pick a darker blue also. Okay, so we've got our darker blue complex fill. I'm going to zoom in a bit and use my arrow keys to move around, and let's just go ahead and start drawing this shape in. I'm going to start right here on his butt. And remember, I can use the control key to curve. We're going to ignore the fact that that is separated by the black line, remember, because that outline is going to be put in last. Staying inside the black line, or even you could do slightly outside of it, really. Okay, and then we're going to overlap these stitches a bit here, like his pants are hiked up a little bit. Okay, and if you like, you can always use the close shape tool over here. I don't always do it. The program will close it automatically for you. Now here it's suggesting a stitch direction of straight up and down. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, actually, you know, pants kind of go straight up and down, don't they? Oops, I must have accidentally clicked because now it wants me to put in my start point. My start and my stop point don't really matter that much for this shape because it's the only area of this color that we have to deal with. So I'll just have the start and stop point be in the same place. Okay, now notice my stitch direction's going crazy. You get one chance to set your stitch direction. If you don't set it right the first time, you just gotta move on. But we can always go back and change it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is go use my select tool to select this area, use my shape tool, and then that's going to allow me to grab my stitch direction and move it. And I'm going to put it there because I actually did decide I should have his jeans going this way, you know, to give it a interesting, different texture than the one on the top. Okay, so we've got his shirt, we've got his pants. I believe the next thing I said I wanted to put in was his face, just so that it would look like his face was inside this white hat / mask thing that he wears. So to do this, we're going to digitize this not using the complex fill tool, because what I want to do is bring in a shape and apply a stitch to that shape. And when we do that, we have to use the buttons down on the bottom. Alright, so we're using a variety of the buttons that we have available to us today. So the shape I want to use is a circle or an ellipse. And we get those from up here, this little pencil with a circle and a square behind it. We're going to left click on that, and the drop down menu comes up. We want to choose this one. It looks like a circle and it says ellipse. I'm going to left click on that. Our cursor becomes a little crosshair with a circle on it, and we're going to left click and drag a circle that's just about the right size, and then we'll rotate it a bit. I'm going to go ahead and move it right into place. I can nudge it a little so that it's exactly how I want it. It doesn't have to be dead perfect though, of course, but we want it to be pretty close. So that is pretty much good enough for me. I may actually nudge it a little bit. and then rotate it a little bit. I can't help myself, guys. You don't have to fiddle with it quite so much. Okay, so there we go. So we've got his face, and now we want to choose a color, kind of like this linen down here would probably match pretty good with his face. And we're just going to go ahead and apply a fill stitch using this down here, standard fill. It's the purple star. I'm going to left click on that, and there we go. So we've got his little face in there. And now we need to have the outer part, the white part of his mask. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to, let's see, we actually need a hole in it that's the same size as this. So let's, well, we'll draw the white part first. So we're going to do this with the complex fill stitch. We're going to left click on that and zoom in a bit. I like to do this about 400% or so when I'm digitizing. So we're going to overlap this a little bit and then follow up the black outline that's around the backpack. Go up around these ears, and remember we can use the control key to curve here. We don't need to go down and follow the outline into there. That part is going to be done just with a run stitch at the end. Follow this. You know what I forgot to do is measure. I forgot to tell you I forgot to measure the, but I know it would tell me to do this as a fill stitch in this face too. So alright, so we've brought it back to the beginning. We're going to right click to generate, and it wants us to choose a stitch direction. So I'm going to choose my stitch direction about like this, because he's kind of bent over like that. Or you know what I could do is I could have it going like this. Yeah, I'll do it like that. And then right click to generate that. Now it wants my start and my stop points. Again, it's not that important because this is the only area of color that's going down right now. We're not going to go and jump around to any of the other whites. So we're just going to, we can have the start and stop be wherever. We'll have it start here and stop here. Okay, and there we go. And what has it done? It has filled it in with the color because I forgot to change my color. So we'll set this to be white. Okay. Now, we still need a hole, though. We need a hole for where his face is. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this fill that we already have that's behind the white right now, and we're going to make a copy of it. So we select that in our sequence view. You can't select it on the screen because it's behind the white stitches there. But if we go in our sequence view, we can select it. We're going to hold down the control key and hit control C, and then we're going to hit control V. All right, so now that has pasted this on top. So we've got two of these. One is under the white and one is on top of the white. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to select the fill, and then we're going to hold down the control key and select the other fill. We're going to right click and we're going to choose combine. And what it'll do is actually cut that hole out. It has cut the hole right in our fill, and look at what it's done though. It's actually changed the stitch direction on us. The stitch direction's going a different way than it was before, so not sure why it does that, but we'll go ahead and change it back. We had our shape tool. We can see the top of our inclination is here, and it changed our start and our stop points too. You got to watch out for that when you start doing these changing stuff with artwork. It changes your stuff around. When we combine and everything, you got to make sure that stuff didn't get changed the way you didn't want it. So I've changed my changes back to the way that I wanted them. Go ahead and hit the select tool and it generates it. Okay, so we've got his hat, his face. Next, I think I said I was going to do his backpack. So let's do that next. So to do the backpack's in two pieces, okay? Well, it's in four pieces, really, because we've got this light green here and over here. We've got the dark green here and over here. So how are we going to get from here to here? We could have a jump. We could have a jump, which would be a trim on most people's machines nowadays. But there's something else that we could do. There's somewhere else that there's going to be stitches in this, and that is where the outline is. So we could actually hide a traveling stitch underneath of our black outline, which is what we're going to do. So here's what I want to do. I want to actually go in and make it so that I can see through these stitches a little bit better. And right now I have it set on 3D, and that makes it hard to see through. If I hit this button here and turn off 3D, I can actually see right where those black lines are, and that's why usually I actually digitize with it in 2D mode so I can see stuff. It looks a little better for for making a video to have it in 3D. But anyway, let's go ahead and start. I don't think it's really gonna matter that much whether I do the light green first or the dark green first. It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I think. So I'm gonna start with the light green. Now, we'll take a look at this here. We've got this shape, this area of color, and we could, if we wanted to, split off this part and make it a satin stitch and have this part back here be a fill. But I don't want to do that because that's going to add something that's not there in the original design, and that's like a break where the end of the satin stitch is. Now, I could do that. Well, you know what we could do, actually, now that I think about it, is have this sew out first and then have the fill sew out on top of it, and then it doesn't have as obvious a seam. You know, I'm coming around to that idea. I think that's what I'll do. We'll sew out, here's what, well, we got to sew out this one and then this one. Yeah, that'll work. And then we have our traveling stitch go back around to here. Yeah, okay, so let's do that. And just to confirm that that's really what we kind of ought to do, let's take a look at our ruler, and we'll click from here to here. It says to use a satin stitch. So, you know, let's oblige it. Well, what about from say here to here? It says to use a fill stitch. So I was right that I should use a satin stitch in the one situation and fill in the other. It would work just fine with it as a fill stitch for the whole thing, but it would lack the dimensionality of being able to change the stitch direction as we go. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's go ahead and do this. We're going to use our Satin Stitch tool up here at the top. So we're going to left click on that, and we're going to start drawing our shape in, sticking to the inside of our black outline. Okay, so we're going to have this go out to the end like this, and then come back around here. Okay, I used the control key for that last click there. Alright, so we've got this shape. Now our inclinations, these are going to be important here. I want one going like this, and like this. And we'll see if we don't need a last one down at the end. If our shape comes out looking wonky, then we'll know that we do need that. So we'll go ahead and right click to generate, and now we still have to put in our start point. So we'll put in our start point here and our stop point here so that it can link up with our satin stitch. And let's take a look at it in 3D, see what it did. Not bad. It needs to be green. I keep forgetting to change my colors first. So let's do a light green here. And we could probably mess around with our inclinations using the shape tool and maybe get this looking a little better. Maybe have an extra inclination in here, which if you need to add inclinations, what you do is in your shape tool down here on the underneath part, there's a little button. You hit that add inclination, and then that will allow us to put in another one. Let's see what that does. You right click to generate it. Yeah, I think that actually looks a little bit better. You may not be able to tell. I think that looks a little bit, it's still a little bit wonky, but we're just gonna move on anyway. So my stop point is up here. So my start point needs to be around there for the next part here. And we're gonna use a complex fill. Just go ahead and trace right on the inside of this black line. And we're just cutting right across here because we want this to overlap it. I always forget to use my control key to make curves. Okay, I'll close the shape, and then the stitch direction, let's have it going this way. And then the start point we want here, and the stop point, let's actually have the start and the stop in the same place. So that way we can travel right from here down this black line out to here and then do this next section. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like in 3D. Pretty cool. Okay, so we know our stop point is here. So what we want to do is use our run stitch, and we're just going to go all right along here. And we'll stop it right here, and we'll just have the next one start right there. Okay, so we right click to generate that. So that's a run stitch. Now there's one thing I want to do to this run stitch, and that is to change the stitch length from 2.5. I want to change it to 4. and hit apply. And what that does is it makes it a little bit less dense, and our run stitch outline is going to have a shorter stitch length than that, and it will make it so that we don't see the green. We'll only see the black. So anyway, we've got our traveling stitch in there, and now we can go and draw this next section. And so should we do this as a satin or as a fill? We could actually do either one, but I think I'm going to do this as a satin. Let's take a look and ask the magic ruler what it thinks. It says to use a satin. Now, there's no reason that we couldn't use a fill, but a satin, satins look pretty cool. Plus, we did this as a satin before, so it would match because that's another one of these straps. So back to our satin stitch tool, and we just go ahead and draw the shape. Okay. Now our inclinations. Let's see if we can't make this. Well, yeah, this is about how we can do it. We don't really have the ability to bend it too much here. So, and then the next thing is our start point will be here in the middle, and our stop point doesn't actually matter because we aren't going anywhere else with this color green. Let's put it in 3D. Take a look. Not too bad, not too bad. All right, so next is going to be the darker green, and so we're going to go ahead and choose a darker green and use the satin tool still. We're going to go ahead and do this next part, and we're going to do it just the same way that we did the other one, where we do the satin for the little strap first, put in our inclinations. Oops, I'm moving my inclination around instead of putting in a new one. There we go. Okay, right click. It wants our start and our stop. We'll have it start here, stop here. Take a look at it. Looks okay. And now we'll draw in the fill. Oops, I'm using the wrong tool. I didn't want to use the line tool for that. I wanted to use the complex fill tool. And we'll just go up and go ahead and draw this in. Again, just overlap that strap so that it's underneath. I use the control key to curve this to the end. Right click. The inclination, I'm going to have it go the same direction basically that the other part of the backpack was. Right click. Start point needs to be here. Stop point needs to be, doesn't really matter that much. You know what, but let's put it here. Okay, and put that in 3D. Pretty good. Now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to travel along the black outline. So this time we're going to go, let's not take the same path and reinforce the green that we did up there. We'll take a different path. We'll start here, which is where my stop is. Okay, so we're going to left click, and remember, you're using the run tool here. Okay, run tool. And we're drawing inside the black outline. Till we get up to where our shape is, and we'll let it off right in the middle there. Okay, so we've just drawn in a nice traveling stitch that's going to go from here up to here that will be covered over by our outline stitch when we get to it. Okay, so now we go in and do our satin stitch, and we're just going to go ahead and draw that in. Oh, I didn't like the way that came out. There we go. Okay, right click, put in our inclination. We only really need one for this. Our start point needs to be here. Our stop point doesn't really matter that much. And we'll take a look at what we got. Pretty cool. He's got his straps on his backpack, ready to rock and roll. Okay, so let's see. You know, I'm actually thinking now what we ought to have done is we ought to have done the backpack before we did this and his face, because now we've got these arms to do, and they're the same color linen. So if you didn't have if you had a machine that's a single needle, it's like an unnecessary needle change, really. Yeah, we'll just keep on trucking here. You know, there's always things that there's always things that you can do better, um, but that's all right. We'll just go ahead and start doing the next part. Now, if we look at his arms, we decide which arm we're going to do first. It's going to be easier to do this arm first and then this one because it's underneath of this arm. So we're going to do this section, then this section, then this section. So we're going to intentionally put in a little bit of overlap, but we don't want to have the whole thing overlapped in there. It would make a bump that would be very visible under this. So if we just digitize this whole arm in one shot, it wouldn't look as good. So I'm going to zoom in about 400% or so. Now we know what stitch we're going to use for this. Of course, this is going to be a satin stitch, but let's go ahead and use the ruler just to confirm that diagnosis. Use a satin. That's right. So we go up and get our satin stitch, and we'll start tracing it in again, staying inside the black outline. Bring it around like that. Okay, and then I'm going to close that off. Right click. It wants our inclinations. Now we're going to go around the bend with the inclinations just like that, where it gently is going to change stitch direction as it goes along. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Oh, we got to set our start and our stop point. So the start up here, we'll have the stop be down here. And once again, I forgot to change my color. So this needs to be that linen color. Okay, so it's linen. And we'll put it in 3D. Looks pretty hot. Now we do need a traveling stitch, so we're going to go from here. Our stop point was here, and we're going to use the run to go from here across to where we're going to start up the rest of his arm. Okay, and we just right click to generate that, and it automatically is going to start in the right place and stop in the right place. And now back to the satin tool. We go in, draw this in, and we're going to ignore the fingers because we're going to do that detail with a running stitch. So just pretend the fingers aren't even there, and then we right click, we put in our inclination, we right click again, our start point is here, our stop point is, actually let's have our stop point be right in the same spot, because next we're doing this arm, so we can have this arm start here and then go and do the whole thing, right? That way there's no jump stitch and no traveling stitch needed. Okay, so we'll put this out of 3D and go ahead and do this next arm. So all we got to do is just get our satin tool and start drawing it. So we're going to stick to the inside of our black outline. Ignore everything that is detail. Just ignore it. Okay. Now once your shape is closed, we start putting in the inclinations. Now this is going to get a little wonky here at the end because we got to curl around this odd shape. Let's see how that does. Right click, we'll set our start point here, and our stop point doesn't really matter because the next thing is so far away I'm not going to travel down there. So the stop point will stop wherever. We'll stop here. Okay, and let's take a look at that. It didn't really do a very good job here at the end. If we zoom in and look at it, it got wonky. So we're going to need to adjust our inclinations there. So we go down, we select this, we use our shape tool, which it still remembers being the add inclinations, because that was the last thing I did with my shape tool. So we see our inclinations are up. I'm going to adjust this one. Basically, it's pretty trial and error to get things like this looking good. We can right click to generate and see what it looks like. There we go. That's filled it in much better than it was before. And we could sit there and futz around with it till it's perfect, but really this is going to have that black outline going over and doing some little detail in here anyway, so we don't really have to worry too much about it. As long as there's stitches there, it's going to be okay. Alright, so now I said I wasn't going to do the traveling stitch, but now it's not that far. We could have the stop point be here and just travel down the leg to here, and then we'll eat a jump from there to there, but we'll go ahead and let it do. We'll do a run. We'll do a travel stitch down here. So let's actually go in and go do a. We'll use the shape tool. we'll set our stop point to be here. Make sure that didn't mess anything up. Look at it in 3D, looks the same. And then we're going to make a travel, that's a run stitch, that travels down along this to start right here. And this is going to be our next shape, is this shape right here, and that we're going to use a satin. So go ahead and just draw this in. Oh, that's too far to the inside. I want to make sure I'm right in the middle or on the outer edge of my black outline rather than on the inside of it. Go around here. We'll close it up with the close shape tool. Put in some inclinations. Set our start point there. Our stop point really doesn't matter because, like I said, I'm going to eat the jump. It's going to go over here. There's going to be either a jump stitch or a cut right here. Sorry. It's just too far to go with the travel. I guess not really. We could go the inside of his pants. All right. I keep changing my mind here, but it's just the way it is. We're going to have the stop point be here, and we're going to follow this black line to the other leg. Okay, so we got it there with our run, and then again we use our satin. I just hate having jump stitches and trims. Like, I really, really do. So that's why I'm like, why don't I just do it right? I made all these videos in the past where like I didn't really worry about it because I just wanted people to get the idea of how to click stuff. You know what I mean? All right, so right click, go ahead and put these things in. There we go. And then my start point needs to be here. My stop point doesn't really matter because it's the last area of this color. And there we go. So it looks kind of funky having these outlines here, but they are going to be covered up by the black, so don't worry. Alright, now we've got his little pom-poms. So we'll do those next. They're going to be white, so we'll go ahead and use our satin tool, set it to white, and draw this. Whoa! Must have clicked over there on accident at some point. Alright, and then go around his little pom-poms on his feet. I guess it's just the top of his boots, and they're drawn crudely. It's not really pom-poms, but whatever. Alright, so there, and then we'll go in and do our stitch directions. So we'll make it kind of radiate around like this. See how that looks. Our start point and our stop point. Okay, look at that in 3D. Fine. This time I'm really going to let there be a trim. I swear, I'm not going to change my mind. No changing my mind. Draw it. Just drawing it in. If you really want to, you can. Put a traveling stitch in, I mean, I'm not going to. Okay, put in the inclinations so that they radiate out from the leg. Start and stops don't matter that much for this one. Look at it in 3D, make sure it's not wonky. It's alright. Okay, let's look at the whole guy there in 3D. Not too shabby. Now remember, we're doing the blacks on his feet. I'm doing his feet along with the rest of the detail work. Because it's black, I'm going to have that be part of the outline stitch. Alright, so that's just how that's going to work. Now, if we look at Jake, we can't really do the same trick with his, at least with this arm, because this just goes over too much of his body. I would really like this to be a satin stitch, though. How could we get... I know what we could do. We sew out this first, and then bring this up in, and we have the fill go around it. That's how we do it. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go in and let's do Jake's arm. So now this part I want to be a satin stitch. So how are we gonna do that? I'll show you. How are we going to do that and still have his body fill look good? I'll show you what I'm thinking here. If you didn't get my explanation to myself. But let's go ahead and just draw this shape in first. We're going to have this do a bit of overlap. So this is going to be outside this area a little bit because it's going to be overlapped by a fill stitch. So we go up and around, up and around, up and around. Okay, and we'll close that off just like that. Let's do our inclinations. This, and remember this part at the end here might get a little wonky because of the odd shape here. Satin stitches really don't like odd perturbed shapes like that, but let's see what happens. We will right click. Now this I'm going to start here on the end and stop here on the inside. Oh, and let's change the color too while we're at it. It's going to be this one, and he's kind of like a harvest gold, so we'll set it to that. Look at it in 3D. Looks pretty good. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in and do a complex fill, and we are going to do it like this. We're going to cut out his eye, and I'm actually going to cut out his mustache too, so that his mustache is a separate piece. And his mouth. So I'm just tracing. Oh, getting a little overzealous there. Tracing around up here, around his little jowl. Okay. And then we're going to kind of carve out his arm and go over it right there. Okay, so it's going to overlap the end. And, ooh, you know what? If we were going to do that, we should have done it with his legs too. We can always change the sewing order. If I'd have thought of it, I probably would have done it right the first time, though. It's alright. Oops. You know, I should really be curving this line. Hold down my control key. I always forget to do that. Okay. Coming around to the home stretch here. Alright. Right click. Let's pick a stitch direction. I'm going to put his stitch direction like this. He's kind of tilted to the side. And then our start point needs to be right where the end point was for our satin. And our stop point, we may need to change the stop point. I'm going to say maybe I'll do his mustache after this, so we'll have the stop point be here. Okay, let's look at that in 3D. How's it look? Looks pretty weird. Looks pretty weird overlapping this satin stitch here. I may have to back this off a little bit, but there's going to be an outline going around it anyway. You know what? I'm going to back this off a little bit. Let's go in and use the shape tool, and we're going to move some of these points in. I'm going to zoom in even farther. I'm going to back these points off where it's overlapping so much. You just right click to generate that. Okay, so there's going to be an outline going around here, so it's not going to look overlapped unless it was so overlapped that it went inside the outline. So I think that took care of that problem there. Now, like I was saying with the legs, I probably should have done the same trick with the legs, but I can always change the order that things sew out in. So I could actually go and have it sew out the arm, and then run down to this arm and have it start here and stop here, and then have it go down here, start here. Well, yeah, have this go in and start here, stop here, run to here, start here, and stop here, do the leg, and then run to wherever I want, or actually just set the start point of the fill to down here. So let's do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, instead of doing it the way that we were doing it, we're going to have a run stitch that's going to go from the end of this satin. We'll just travel down to here. Okay. Now that's not in the right order, so we have to change it. We go down to our sequence view, we grab our run stitch, and we drag it on top of, left click and drag it on top of our where we want it to go after, which is right after the arm here. So this is going to now go arm, travel stitch to this other arm, which we're going to draw in using the satin tool. So we go in and just start going around here. Remember, those fingers, they're going to be done with the outline, so we don't need to worry about them. Okay, right click, put in our inclinations, right click, start and stop. The start needs to be here, the stop is going to be here, and then we're going to, that actually looks a little wonky, so I probably should go and change it. If your satin stitch looks wonky, basically just go and adjust the inclinations a little bit and see if you can't get it looking better. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so we're going to travel now from here to this leg, so we use a run from here to here. Okay, and now if we look, we're doing all this is out of order. So we need to take our fill and drag it back so that it's the last thing. So it goes arm, travel, other arm, travel. Okay, and then we're going to do this part, this part, this part. And we're going to have to keep moving this fill around because it still wants to be the last thing, and it's going to be the last thing eventually. But we gotta, this is why it's important to plan your design and have a plan for what element goes first, because otherwise it can get very confusing very quick if you have to move things around. As you can see, even with this relatively few amount of elements, that it's confusing you have to remember, what's where. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and do our satin stitch. We're gonna overlap it just a little bit with that fill. Bring it down. Bring it back up. Okay, close it off. We right click, we start putting in our inclinations. Lovely. We right click again, our start point is here, our stop point is here. We have a travel stitch, so we use the run. We're going to travel down across this. Okay, remember that's going to be covered up by the other leg. And then we use the satin again, and we trace his weird other foot here. Jake is a magic dog. He's made out of some kind of magic rubber, so he can twist himself into very strange positions. Okay, so then we right click, we put in our inclinations. And inclinations really do take practice, okay? So don't be frustrated if your stitch constantly looks weird. Okay, so the start point here and the stop point here so that we can start the next one here in the middle. Alright, so then we use, again, we don't need a travel stitch here, because these are butted up against each other. Oh, you know what? I want to have this be a little bit overlapped underneath the fill. There. Curl around. Okay. Right click. Inclinations. I don't like that one. Okay, let's see what that does. Start point is here, stop point is here. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now what do we got to do? We got to take our fill and make it go last. So we're going to left click and drag it down on top of our last satin path. Now that is the thing that's on top, and we need to adjust its start point. So we need to take its start point and move it down here, where the stop point was on that satin stitch. Okay, very good. And now we can go ahead and let's do his little little mustache weird thing that he's got going on his face. I forget where we put the stop point on this. Okay, on this side. So the start point on this little goober thing is going to be right here. So let's go ahead and go up to our satin tool and start drawing it in. Stick to the inside of this nose. It's going to overlap it. I'm forgetting to use the control key again. Alright, keep going around here. Okay, right click, put in some inclinations for our satin stitch. Right click again, start, and our stop. Well, we still have to do this little spot of fill right here. So let's actually do this little bit here. So we'll have the stop be there, and then let's do. I don't know if I should do this part as a satin. Let's do it as a satin. It could go either way. Inclinations. Start here, stop wherever, because it's the last of this color. Okay, put it in 3D, take a look. Looking pretty sharp there, Finn and Jake, even though you guys don't have faces yet. I haven't done the detail of the faces, and I haven't done the outline. I think everything's shaping up pretty good, and there are almost no jumps. Where's the only jump in this whole thing? Here to here. That's it. It's the only jump in the whole design so far, so that's pretty good. Alright, I am going to stop here because this is going to be like a record for the longest video I've ever done otherwise. I'm going to stop here, and I will finish this video and this design in the near future. But I'm not going to do it right now because I'm really tired, and Meadow wants to do stuff. So I'm going to stop it, and I'm sure that we won't get farther than this in class, so we'll do the rest of the project in class next month, but I will make the video before then for those of you watching at home. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.